What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for November 2nd, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Saturday edition of the podcast. Lots of big college football games today. Michigan takes on number 1 Oregon. And then, of course, if you are a Penn State fan, huge game for them against Ohio State. Not a lot of games going on in the city today. That's okay, though. College basketball does kick off next week. So Monday, we'll take a look at the Big Five basketball teams and just where they seem to go. Lots of optimism for the Big Five schools this year. St. Joe's is looking good. LaSalle's looking to make the next step. Temple should be better. Villanova is kind of in a do-or-die situation for Kyle Neptune. So lots of good storylines for the Big Five. We'll take a look at the schools on Monday, so stay tuned for that. Before we get into today's episode, some quick housekeeping. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont at Twitter and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont, and continue to spread the word. Let's continue to grow this thing. I've been saying it, but the truth of the matter is, if you're enjoying this, likely someone in your circle will as well. Lots of big things on the horizon. Looking forward to the rest of this year and then on into 2025. Like I said, lots of good things happening. Yesterday, we were featured in the On Pattison newsletter. That's a weekly news or a daily newsletter during the week. Hopefully, that's the start of many times we'll be featured in there. They have a section about this day in Philly sports history, and they tend to grab tweets of people who tweet about what happened. So hopefully that means we will continue to be featured in there as well occasionally, and that will also help to grow this thing and get some traffic. So thank you again for all your support. Lots of good things happening for this podcast. We're getting there, and I thank you for it. I mentioned yesterday the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame online archives are now up. It's a project that I've been working on. All the information you need is down in the description. Follow that link to the site I created. But the Philadelphia Sports Heritage Collection is now available online. It's just a way for everyone to see all the cool memorabilia and artifacts that the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame has. Obviously, there's limited space in the museum, constantly rotating out the exhibits and the displays. But this gives you a chance to look and see what's going on. Future, I'm looking for ways to really spotlight certain players or certain teams or certain eras. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to have a lot of fun with that. But that is now live. And if you follow the link in the description, it'll take you right to the website. It explains sort of the collection, the process, and everything like that. But very, very excited to be a part of that. Like I said, it's been, to me, like it is work, and I've been telling you I like to tell the story and the background, but to me it's not work. Like I just kind of mess around in there, look up, and kind of bunch some of the things together based on either player, team, whatever, and just kind of go down rabbit holes, things I normally do anyway for this podcast. So it's a lot of fun trying to tell this backstory to a lot of the things that the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame has. So go check that out. It's a easy thing. You can do it right from your phone and just kind of take that trip down Philly sports memory lane. And if you read some of the information in the site, ultimately the goal is to kind of be your one-stop shop for Philly sports history, where you can get the stories, see the artifacts, celebrate the legends, and just really, like I mentioned this yesterday, and I really believe it. We get caught up in how the teams disappoint us, and oftentimes it's overlooked just how rich the sports history is in Philadelphia. So this is just a way to kind of celebrate that, take the trips down Philly sports memory lane, and have a good time with that. I always tell you, I like to get the information right. I received some bad information on Halloween. I don't know whether the person I was talking to's phone was stuck in a different time zone. No clue where the Eagles game starting at 5 o'clock came from. That's a 4:05 start. Sorry. Sometimes I get faulty information. I did not fact check. That's on me. But I always like to make sure the facts are straight. So, like I said, maybe the person who told me that their phone was a time zone ahead. But would not be surprised if the NFL did start doing something like that, though, because it makes sense. They could start the kickoff at 1 o'clock and then really have all day of football and not have that lull in between the 4 o'clock games and the Sunday night football game. So NFL, if you're listening, I just created a way for you to dominate Sundays even more so than what you already are. All right. So I mentioned being featured in the On Patterson newsletter, which is pretty cool. Like I said, I gave them permission to use my tweets and really just as a way to get the word out there. So it's a pretty cool thing as long as it makes sense for them. I certainly think it makes sense for me. But I have to bring something else up. And I've talked about this before. And every time it happens, I feel as though it's becoming more and more blatantly obvious. Yesterday, one of the questions on Twitter for the midday show on WIP was, is this a trap game for the Eagles? Now, I know it has the makings and the setups for a trap game. But let's recap yesterday's question of the day for this day in Philly sports history, which came out long before the WIP midday show came out. I asked you, is Sunday a trap game for the Eagles? See where I'm going with this? 64% of you said no. I tend to agree, though. It does, because it's coming off a big win. You're going into 2 straight division games. Has all of the characteristics of a trap game. But for me, I think the way this team has been playing, I think they're going to be okay. But thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. And WIP Midday Show, Joe, Hugh, Kyle, just give me a shout out. That's all I ask. Come on, like every time. So I don't know whether Hugh's listening because of the connection with Philly Goat. I don't know if Joe is low-key secretly listening. If you guys are, how are you? I would gladly come in and do a segment on your show. Just give me some credit. Kyle, maybe he's listening. I don't know. Either way, just help a brother out here. Like, come on. But thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. But, yeah, I mean, it's becoming way more than a coincidence at this point. But love you guys. Just give me a shout-out, man. That's all I ask. Like, that would go a long way in helping me out if you shout me out on the midday show. Just saying. So, speaking of the question of the day, lots of feedback about my comment the other day about Reese's Pieces being the most underrated candy out there. Lots of people either are strongly in favor of that or called me an idiot and dead set against it. And those who support that, I stand by that. Reese's Pieces is the most underrated Halloween candy. So much so that before we went out trick-or-treating, I took all the bags of Reese's Pieces out of our candy bowl and kept them aside for myself because, like I said, it's the best candy out there. It's excellent if you mix it in with vanilla ice cream. If you go to Dairy Queen or whatever the local ice cream shop is, the Blizzard or whatever they call their Blizzard, a Flurry, whatever, nothing beats a Reese's Pieces Blizzard. Nothing beats just opening up a little pack of the Reese's Pieces and popping them back. And for those of you who said, no, you're wrong, Reese's Pieces are terrible and they're not the most underrated candy, sorry, but you're just wrong. But you can always let me know your thoughts on that on the Back to the Future voice and text line. I've been eating way too many Reese's Pieces the past 2 days, so if there is such a thing as eating too many Reese's Pieces. Anyway, be sure to go check out my boys on the Clashing Conferences podcast. That's available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. New football episode dropped, Halloween special for that. The season finale of baseball dropped yesterday. Made a little appearance on that. Had some fun with those guys, so go check that out. And then the college sports is kicking off soon. They're going to kind of wrap up the college football season, go right into college basketball, have some new guys coming in on that. Always a good time hanging out with those guys. They're doing some great things over there. And Steven, the content manager over there, has done a phenomenal job. Good friend of mine. We kind of bounce ideas and talk back and forth every couple weeks. So go check them out. They're doing some great things over there, and you will not be disappointed. And then go to Philly Goat. I was just talking about it. Trick-or-treating, that cooler backpack would have been perfect. Today is the perfect day to go buy the cooler backpack that they partnered with Varsity Coolers on. Get your Eagles gear, get some Sixers gear, Flyers gear, whatever you got. Check out what Philly Goat has to offer. It's November. According to Mariah Carey, it's the holiday season, so why not start doing some early Christmas shopping? Use that promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. And I'm telling you, if anybody wants to buy me a birthday present, it's coming up December 5th, I will take the book bag Varsity Cooler bag. You can't beat it. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order and go see everything the Philly Goat has to offer. All right, we got a double header today down in South Philly. First, at 1, the Flyers will take on the Bruins. Flyers are coming in hot. They've won 3 of 4, 2 straight, including that 2-0 win over the Bruins the other night up in Boston. I'm looking for them to kind of continue that energy and keep their momentum going. They've been playing well. They've been getting great, excellent goaltending, really. So let's hope that can keep up. Mishkov's been kind of quiet the past couple games. Hopefully he's able to kind of snap out of it and give the home crowd something to cheer about. And then tonight at 7:30, the Sixers will be playing the Grizzlies. No Joel, no Paul George once again tonight. And I mean, this team is just not clicking right now. So I don't know if the whole Joel thing has been a distraction or what, but hopefully they can get it going tonight, much like they did against the Pacers, against the Grizzlies tonight at 7:30. But the whole rare doubleheader down at the Wells Fargo Center tonight. Flyers Bruins at 1, Sixers Grizzlies at 7:30. The big story for the Sixers yesterday was Joe called an impromptu, I guess, or they called it a pop-up press conference, and basically was pissed off and called out Marcus Hayes specifically by name for calling him soft and saying he doesn't want to play. And just was very frustrated. He said, I've done a lot for this effing city. I broke my face twice, broken fingers, came back from whatever. And he does have a point. I think anybody calling Joe soft, you're missing the point with Joe. I certainly would not call him somebody who's soft. Fragile, yeah. I mean, and that unfortunately just is, some guys are like that. And I said it before, a lot of his injuries are just freak, not like the typical injuries you would expect, like fracturing your orbital bone in your face twice, getting Bell's palsy, you know what I mean? Like having some guy jump on you, that's not necessarily soft. That's just bad luck more so than anything. So I think Joe certainly hears the criticism. I think to a certain extent, I think he gets it. But I don't think this criticism should be directed toward Joe. If anything, it should be directed toward the Sixers organization for their handling of this. Like, they just were not honest with anybody. And even Joe his story didn't necessarily match up with what the Sixers are telling us. So the whole thing has just been bungled by the Sixers, and Joe, Nick Nurse, they're kind of catching the brunt and the shrapnel from this. And I want to see Daryl Morey come out and say something, because this is really on him and his team for the way it's been handled. But Joe was not happy. And again, I don't blame him. I mean, if you want to get mad at him for playing in the Olympics, you certainly can. That's fair. That's fair criticism. But to say he doesn't want to play when he's done nothing in his career but come back from injuries early, I don't think that's fair at all. And maybe this is just me sticking up for him because I like him. But I mean, I really do. Like, to call him soft is just not accurate. Like I said, fragile, yes. Soft, no. So I don't know if this was just a one-off thing or is something that we need to monitor moving forward. But Sixers Grizzlies tonight down at the Wells Fargo Center. No Joel Embiid, no Paul George. Can we get a win? Maybe. And actually, at this point, I'm not even going to get greedy and ask for a win. Can we just play decent basketball? Can we box somebody out and hit a shot? That would be a good start. Big Eagles news yesterday. And part of me kind of was like, this makes sense now. And then I got frustrated all over again. But Darren Sproles was on the Deshaun Jackson and LaShawn McCoy podcast the other day. And the topic of Carson Wentz came up. And Sproles basically pulled back the curtain and really gave a glimpse into what was going on near the end of Carson Wentz's career. And if you haven't heard this, I haven't listened to the full podcast yet, but I do know they do a good job. But man, doesn't look good for old Carson. But essentially said he came back. Well, we all kind of noticed this anyway. But during the end of that run and into the playoffs and to the Super Bowl, he was like moping around, pissed off that the team was winning without him. And we all knew it came out that he had a fragile ego, and he even said he could have been a better teammate. But to be moping around to the point where I believe Darren Sproles is the one that pulled him aside and said, dude, you got to stop. Like, we all want to be out there, but come on, we got a chance to win a Super Bowl here. But then it got better. He said that, and this totally made sense to me because of the way that season started out. He said Wentz did not want to run the same offense as he had success in as the year before, since Nick Foles won a Super Bowl with it. First of all, that is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard in my life. You were almost the MVP running that offense, and because you're so fragile with your ego, you don't want to run the same offense. And then what's even worse is that the Eagles agreed to it. So if you remember the start to that season, everybody just thought it was Nick Foles just having like a magical stretch there. That offense looked like it was stuck in the mud for the first few weeks of that season, even going into the Jacksonville game. And really didn't start get going until after Carson Wentz got hurt again. So that just, on so many fronts, like obviously Carson's just a weak dude to be that, like you had success. You would have been the MVP if you didn't hurt your knee running that offense. Maybe my mindset's different. To me, I would have been like, all right, boys, let's run it back and let's go back to back. But instead, you're crying about Nick Foles winning a Super Bowl? Come on. And then on the Eagles, and I don't know if this was Doug Peterson or if it was from the higher ups, but why would you allow that to happen? You had success, and everybody blamed it on Frank Reich leaving and really got on Doug for not being able to do anything. Doug caught a lot of shit for that, especially if it was the front office telling him to do that, and then they fired him. Man, what a mess that was. Sproles did go on to say that the tight end was his comfort zone, like his security blanket. He said there was a lot of times that they would call the play, I think it was HB1, where the halfback was the check down guy, and Sproles said he'd be there open, and he would still throw it to Zach Ertz. And if you think back, everybody was like, oh my God, he throws every pass to Zach Ertz. Well, that seemingly was just him choosing to do that. And he also didn't listen to coaching. And we kind of heard rumblings of that. He flat out said it in a number of different ways. He just didn't listen to the coaches. And to me, like I said, that whole 2018 into the end of his career in Philly now completely makes sense to me. And I think Doug Peterson at that point had enough, said, I hate this guy. I want to see what Jalen Hurts can do. The team's going nowhere in 2020. And I think that was ultimately what happened. But I think the Eagles may have done Doug dirty. And this is speculating now, if they're the ones that told him to go ahead and switch the offense to keep Carson happy. And if it was on Doug, then Doug got what he deserved. But I don't see why you would switch from something that was so successful as a coach to just to please a quarterback who's a fragile ego. I don't know, but it was just an interesting article I read. I think it's just the issue was he's a small town dude, never really had any kind of adversity or competition, and when things got tough, he folded. And it's a shame because he did have the talent. I mean, we saw him play at an MVP level, but then you want to change that offense? Like, what? I don't know. He's a scumbag, and I feel like that's been the word of the week is scumbag. So Carson Wentz, you can go up there in this week's Scumbag Hall of Fame with the New York Yankee fans and the LA Dodger fans. You're a scumbag. Weak, feeble-minded scumbag, but a scumbag nonetheless. All right, back to the real football. Dallas Goedert and Darius Slay are both out tomorrow. Looks like Mekhi Becton, Jalen Carter, and Landon Dickerson are all going to play. The Jags are kind of beat up, so there could be the Eagles have an opportunity to have a big game, but we'll have more on that tomorrow with our 3 keys to the game. Speaking of the aforementioned WIP midday show, LaShawn McCoy was on there for an interview. It was a great interview. He talked about a lot of his time in Philly, the relationship he has with the team now. Said he's a fan of Nick, and flat out said, I have a lot of influence in that building still. Nick has influence on the offense. Okay. And I'm okay with that. And I will admit I was very tough on him a few weeks ago. I said I was done with him. A lot of their lack of fast starts, lack of energy, not being prepared for games, it fell on him. So if what LaShawn is saying is true, do we owe Nick more credit for this 3-game winning streak? That is the question of the day. 267-495-8531. That's a Back to the Future voice and text line. But should Nick Sirianni get credit for this 3-game winning streak? He was blamed for the early season stuff. I think fair is fair, especially if what LaShawn McCoy said was true, that he still has a major influence in that offense. Should we be giving Nick credit? I think even if he doesn't have influence in the offense, should we give Nick credit for this winning streak? I mean, we blamed him, and I know that kind of goes with the job of an NFL head coach. But let me know your thoughts. 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. But the LaShawn McCoy interview was good, and he's good on TV. I think he's on Fox Sports. I think he does a good job, and like I mentioned, his podcast with Deshaun Jackson is good as well. Some Phillies news. Scott Kingery was traded to the Angels. It just seemed like no matter how well he played in AAA, they weren't going to bring him back up. So maybe give somebody else a chance. And would not be surprised to see him excel out there, though. But Scott Kingery to the Angels. Still lots of rumors about free agents going on with the Phillies. And as the hot stove starts heating up, we'll have you covered here on This Day in Philly Sports History. All right, today we're going to go back to 1990. And on this day in 1990, the Sixers opened the season with a 124-116 win over the Bulls out in Chicago, the eventual NBA champion Bulls that year. Charles Barkley started the season with 37 points, 10 rebounds. Johnny Dawkins added 25 points and 11 assists. Jordan was Jordan, 34 points, 7 assists, 7 steals. But the story of the day was coming off the bench for the Sixers that day and playing 20 minutes was Manute Bol, who stood 7'7". He had 4 rebounds, 4 blocks, and he was acquired that offseason via trade. And once he checked into the game, he became the tallest player to ever play for the Philadelphia 76ers at 7'7". To this day, he is the tallest to ever play in the NBA. He is tied with George Muresan. Remember him? He had some good commercials back in the day. But George Muresan and Manute Bol, both 7'7", are the tallest players to ever play in the NBA. And Manute Bol made his Sixers debut on this day back in 1990, becoming the tallest player in Sixers history. You might remember Manute Bol once hit 7 3-pointers in a game. just little tidbit there. But on this day, back in 1990, Sixers beat the Bulls 124-116 to open the season. Charles Barkley with 37 points, 10 assists, but Manute Bol made his Sixers debut, becoming the tallest player in Sixers history. Rest in peace, Manute, but he was always, for some reason, was one of my favorite players. I don't know why I liked Manute Bol so much. He seemed like a likable guy, too. But Manute Bol made his Sixers debut on this day in 1990. Finally, today, our 2024 Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame inductee spotlight is on Joan Moore-Gnat. And she is a gymnastics. She's a gymnast. She's a Philly native and Girls High graduate. She's a four-time, and she did this 4 straight years, U.S. all-around champion. She's won 6 national titles, the all-around, on the vault, the floor, and the balance beam. She won the AAU all-around championship in 1973, the 1974 AAU all-around uneven bar and floor exercise champion. Her 10 national titles is 3rd all-time in United States gymnastics history. She was the United States Gymnast of the Year in 1974. She also competed in the 1972 Olympics, where she finished 4th on the team competition, 21st in the all-around. She's a 1994 inductee into the USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame. And after retiring, she did some coaching and then served 11 years on the U.S. Gymnastics Federation Board of Directors. And on November 7th, Joan will take her spot among the greatest athletes in Philadelphia sports history when she is inducted into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame 2024 induction class. But Joan Moore-Gnat Gymnastics is today's 2024 Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame induction spotlight. As I mentioned, if you want more information on the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, there's a link in the description. The Heritage Collection, the online auction item or online archive items are up. Go check that out. But shout out to you, Joan Moore-Gnat, today's Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame inductee spotlight. One of the best to ever do it, and really set the tone for the gymnastics stars of the 80s, 90s, and today. So Joan Moore, Philly's own, shout out to you. On this day in 1990, Sixers beat the Bulls 124-116. Manute Bol making his debut, becoming the tallest player to ever play for the Sixers, and to this day, still the tallest, one of the 2 tallest players to ever play in the NBA. Let me know your thoughts on Nick. Should we give him credit for this 3-game winning streak? 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that, anything else Philly sports related off your chest. Want to rip me for my candy choices? All of that is fair game. But we have a doubleheader down in South Philly. Flyers, Bruins at 1. Sixers, Grizzlies at 7:30. We'll have more on the Eagles tomorrow, including our 3 keys to the game. I would love to know your thoughts on Carson Wentz as well. That's all good fodder for the Back to the Future voice and text line. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for November 2nd, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Saturday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.